Welcome to the HR Chat Show, one of the world's most downloaded and shared podcasts designed for HR pros, talent execs, tech enthusiasts, and business leaders. For hundreds more episodes and what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.
Welcome to another episode of the HR Chat Pod. I'm your host today, Bill Banham. And in this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Patrick Simon, Senior Partner over at McKinsey, the global management consulting firm. Listen as Patrick shares his experiences of working with CEOs and how today's business leaders can tackle the big challenges head on. McKinsey recently released a report called State of Organizations, and we're going to be discussing some of the findings today as part of the HR Chat episode as well. Hey, Patrick, welcome to the show today.
Hi, Bill. Thanks for having me.
So beyond my reintroduction there, I always like to invite my guests to begin by introducing themselves to our audience.
Sure, very happy to. Patrick Simon, I'm a senior partner out of our Berlin office, and I co-lead our people and organizational performance practice, which deals with any kind of organizational questions, effectiveness, and efficiency. And in that capacity, also co-authored our State of Organizations report, Bill, which you already referenced. I work globally, so I spent quite a few years in the US and North America working with companies, improve their organization, and looking forward to the conversation today.
Me too. So let's get into it then, Patrick. McKinsey's State of Organization report breaks down 10 shifts that organizations are facing today and included participation from business leaders around the globe. Can you briefly mention some of those 10 shifts? We're going to get into the details later, of course, and explain what motivated you and your team to conduct that particular research.
Absolutely. So about a year ago, we came together as a leadership group and we shared an observation that the type of questions that CEOs and CHROs would ask us around organizational effectiveness had become a lot more profound. They had essentially undergone a bit of a tectonic shift and referred to the true foundations of an organization in the sense of what will our organization look like in 5 years from now? How can we actually continue to compete? How can we respond to all the stuff that's going out on there in terms of COVID, sustainability, net zero, digitization, an emerging new dynamic between the East and the West? And so we got together and we thought about designing a compass for business leaders around what the most important organizational shifts are that should be top of mind for the C-suite. So we went out and asked 2,500 business leaders about what their organizational priorities are, and we married that with our own research and came up with a list of 10 organizational shifts. Now, I won't go through all of them, but if I were to summarize kind of the two key thrusts, those would be speed on the one hand and talent on the other hand. Speed because the number of unknown unknowns, the circumstances and the things that are unfolding in the future that we don't know about yet has become a lot more frequent. And only speed will allow you to react in due course to them and with an effective response. And secondly, companies need to be the best talent attractor because only if you have the best talent, you will actually be able to change swiftly with the many unknown circumstances that will most likely unfold in the next years.
Thanks for tuning in to the HR Chat podcast. If you're enjoying this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. And now, back to the conversation.
Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit more then. The report says that only half of survey respondents feel that their organization is well prepared to anticipate and react to new disruptions. One would have thought, given everything that's happened over the last few years, that folks would be on that by now. Why do you think that's the case? Did that surprise you? How can companies be more prepared to react to future shocks and disruptions?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the key numbers that struck us. The other one, by the way, which kind of goes hand in hand, is that only 5% of the organizations we surveyed believe they have the capabilities they need to be successful in the future. Now, on about only half of the organizations being comfortable with being prepared about future shocks, I mean, it is a result of the two major disruptions we've had over the past years, being COVID and the conflict in Ukraine, which is really shaking the earth right now. And neither of those, the majority of organizations saw coming, right? So when I talk to organizations about being prepared, the number one thing they say is that they don't really know what's going to come. There's a lot of things on the horizon that could evolve, right? I think we've just gone through the AI, or we're going through the AI revolution with, I think, a lot of questions on, how will that unfold? What does that mean to how we do business? And there's likely more coming. We have a company featured in the report that does quantum computing. I believe Google came out with a new version of the quantum computer today, which could really revolutionize elements of how businesses work, right? So I think one driver to that level of unpreparedness is just the number of events that will likely unfold that we're not aware of. The second one is still the lack of agility of organizations, the lack of speed. And the majority of organizations that I see, they're still structured in rather traditional hierarchical ways. During COVID, what we saw is that a lot of organizations did away with that. I was just visiting an organization today that would run on 5-page job descriptions, very detailed. Every employee in the organization knew exactly what to do. When COVID came, they kind of got rid of those, and instead they just met in the morning and looked at what are the priorities we need to get done. And then they put the best talent on those priorities. And they've kept that as a cultural element, right? So the ability to react swiftly and be prepared irrespective of what's coming, that's still something that a lot of organizations want to have, but they're not there yet. It's one of the top priorities. It's the number one thing we had on our list in terms of organizational shifts is speed and ability to react to unforeseen circumstances.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the HRchat Show. IEA training provides professional development to a changing workforce with changing needs, and we're proud to support this episode of the HRchat podcast. IEA offers lots of courses, webinars, and on-demand training to meet our students where they are and help them reach their goals. We're proud of our contribution to better risk analysis and high operating standards in the industry. Learn more at ieatraining.org. And now, back to the conversation.
Okay. So maybe I was a little bit harsh in my tone in my previous question there then, Patrick. I get it. Folks are literally in the process right now of adapting to huge changes, huge unforeseen changes. However, are you seeing that a lot of companies are trying to do what they can to future-proof? So, for example, embracing new AI-powered technologies to augment and maybe even replace some of their workforce, if that helps with unknown disasters in the future. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll come to AI in a second. First of all, the majority of organizations are trying to improve and reduce the time between picking up a signal in the market, having that signal travel to the relevant decision maker in an organization, and then having the response travel back to the market. Sounds complicated, but it's essentially the path information takes through an organization until a decision is made, until a reaction is visible in the market. And in order to do so, they deconstruct their organization by removing hierarchy levels, by placing trust back into the employees. There's a beautiful anecdote of Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, when she took the CEO office. I'm sure you're aware of this one, but I think one of the first things she did was she took a 12-page dress code that had dress code rules and suggestions for any possible occasion. She tossed that into the trash bin and said, as of now, the dress code is dress appropriately. I think that's a great anecdote of what a lot of organizations are doing these days. They're deconstructing excessive process and structural organizations and putting judgment back into people's hands. Obviously, sometimes that goes wrong, but the benefit typically significantly exceeds the investment and some of the errors that come with that. The second element, indeed, is technology, both AI and more conventional technology. I see a lot of organizations invest in foundational technology through ERP systems and just making sure data and information is available, but also AI, which is posing an interesting question to HR leaders, because leaders in the future, do not only need to have a view of the human capabilities they have in their organization, but also the extension of these capabilities through AI. Where can AI help? Where is AI better? Where should we not trust AI? And what's the kind of culture of innovativeness, Bill, that you mentioned, and openness? By the way, here I see a difference between North America and Europe. I do a lot of work in Europe, where often the view is more focused on the risks, whereas in the US and in Canada, it's often more focused on the advantages. So we'll see how that organizational cultural element will evolve over the next years.
In the fast-changing new world of work, organizations that want to succeed must support their teams to develop the right skills for today and for the future. As practical learning experts, Holt EF Corporate Education helps organizations and employees of all levels to develop the critical business skills, attitudes, and behaviors they need to be successful. We combine the expertise and agility of a boutique learning partner with the resources of a trusted, global organization. Learn more at holtef.com.
I'd like to get some predictions from you. You've given us a good overview, and you wrapped up your answer there by saying we'll see what happens. However, I always like to prod and push for predictions on this show. What are some of your predictions for the role of AI in the workplace over the next few years then? To what extent would you guess, and I'm accepting it's a guess, but you're a clever chap and you guys do all of these awesome surveys. Would you guess, will AI be augmenting and replacing traditional roles? And what are some of those new roles that are being created right now that we wouldn't have perhaps even envisaged a few years ago? Give us your take.
Yeah, it's a really good question. First of all, I'm positive on what we're seeing. I do think we came up with a number that suggests that generative AI alone can add several trillions in value to the global economy, often through business models that we don't yet know and applications that we don't yet know. I do think there is probably going to be a replacement of certain jobs. But those will transition into new jobs, right? I think every time we've gone through a technological revolution, be it industrialization, be it the agricultural revolution, be it the service revolution, or more recently, if I think about the emergence of Google, where some people thought marketing would go away. We have more people in marketing nowadays than we ever had before, right? So with AI, I'm positive that there is going to be an emergence of new jobs. We don't know yet what they will be exactly. But if I think about design, for example, we will still require human designers, but maybe their creativity will be accelerated and made feasible and visible more swiftly through AI. If I think about customer service, I would love to have a human interact with me effectively on customer service, but maybe that human will be aided through AI because AI will dip into, case laws and looking at what worked in the past and what didn't work. I think there's a shortage of tens of millions of teachers around the world, obviously often in emerging markets where technology is scarce. I fully understand that. But can we actually help humanity learn more through AI, right? So I think there's a full array of positive examples where currently we have a shortage of human capability that can be compensated for by AI. I also think it will extend throughout the entire value chain. It will probably go, all the way from procurement to innovation, R&D, manufacturing operations, and it will be important to HR because in the future, the competitiveness of an organization will not be defined by the human capabilities alone, but by the combination of tech capabilities, AI capabilities, and human capabilities.
Patrick, there's been a steady increase in companies enforcing stronger mandates to make their workers go back to the office. Given your findings from the study, how do you believe this shift will play out over the shorter term, and what happens when the job market swings back and it's more in favor towards the candidates again?
I think we'll see a balanced hybrid view in the future. And the reason is that especially younger talent, and that's what we see in the data, they just love the hybrid model. And I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? You get to spend another day or two at home or away. You can spend some time with your loved ones. You see your kids come home from school, grab lunch with them, right? At the same time, they do want the opportunity to meet and get together. And it gives people a feeling of purpose to actually leave their home in the morning and go somewhere, right? Go to work. Some people find that liberating and purpose giving, and it's exciting to meet other people, right? So from a talent bench perspective, we see very clearly that that is what people want. Obviously, it only pertains to the sliver of the population that can do that. There's a lot of jobs that will continue to be on site in operations, production, partly in customer service. I do think there is a reaction, Bill, as you say, by a lot of companies that say, hey guys, let's get back to work. Let's come in. We want to see what you're doing. But if you dig deeper into that problem actually only exists because most organizations are not yet able to measure output and impact, but they measure input through presence and through the time that is being worked. So I've had a number of conversations with companies that say, hey, we're really uncomfortable with the hybrid model. But when I then say, hey, let's go through the exercise of actually thinking about what's the impact you want from your employees, what's the output you can measure and want to measure, they got a lot more comfortable with a hybrid model. So I think in the future, we'll see more hybrid models, let alone the cost advantages you will probably get by downsizing some of the real estate. And I see more organizations warming up to it these days.
Based on your conversations, Patrick, with CEOs, how important are flexible hours or maybe the 4-day work week? We've done a few episodes on that recently on this show, as it's been proven out in countries like the UK, and it's being tested rigorously in Canada right now. How important are those sorts of benefits, if you like, when it comes to attracting and also retaining top talent?
It's really important. So the interesting thing is that some of the old criteria, well, if we want to call it traditional criteria, like salary, they're still as important as they used to be, but there's other criteria that are now equally important. And one is around flexibility, the other one is around purpose. Both of them go back to a wish by talent, and CEOs and CHROs do feel that they are looking for organizations that do a better job at actually embedding their personal lives into the organization. The contract, the emotional contract between employer and employee is changing. Employees expect more flexibility because they do want to live a life that they design, and that's kind of running on their clock. And they also want a different feeling of purpose. They want to work towards a greater good. And the beacon organizations, the best practice examples that we selected for this year, they all have that. They are human-centric organizations that think about the needs of the employees almost as much as they would think about the needs of the customer and consumer. And if you bring both together and you line up human needs in your organization with customer needs and the value proposition you bring to market, you will actually see that you can create more value and create a better match, and things line up a lot more smoothly. So it's tremendously important. Flexibility is at top of the list. You said something really important earlier. It always depends a little bit on the market environment. Are talents currently being sought out, or is there an excess of talent? But largely, that's the direction we're seeing it move right now.
Okay, very good, very good. This is why I do this show, because I get to shut up and listen and learn. We are coming towards the end of this particular conversation already, though, Patrick. But before we do wrap up, how can our listeners connect with you? How can they learn more about the findings and other research by McKinsey? And of course, it would be remiss of me, given what you mentioned earlier, not to just quickly ask you, what's the dress code over at McKinsey?
So I'll start with that one. Dress code is defined by the client. So today I was running around in sportswear outfit for the better part of the day. And then I did switch into a suit because I was meeting another client that was wearing a suit. So that's part of our culture, that we adapt to the client setting. And then when we're in our office, it's pretty casual these days. Look, I'm very happy to connect with the community. You find me under LinkedIn, Patrick Simon. You also find me on McKinsey.com. There's a bunch of articles. If you're looking for the report, you can just Google State of Organizations and it'll come up on our site. It's free to download. And yeah, Bill, thanks a lot for having me. Great conversation.
Absolutely. That just leaves me to say for today, Dr. Patrick Simon, thank you very much for being my guest. As always, listeners, until next time, happy working.
Thanks for listening to the HR Chat Show. If you enjoyed this episode, why not subscribe and listen to some of the hundreds of episodes published by HR Gazette? And remember, for what's new in the world of work, subscribe to the show, follow us on social media, and visit hrgazette.com.